Ryan Carter was just 22, but life already felt like a mountain he couldn't climb. Once a bright college student with dreams of becoming a designer, he had dropped out after his father's death, unable to juggle grief, bills, and expectations. Now, most of his days started the same way, in bed, under a pile of undone laundry, phone in hand, alarm snoozed over and over. The morning sun streamed through the blinds, but it never reached his spirit. Each time the alarm rang, Ryan would mumble, "Tomorrow," a promise he never kept. Tomorrow he'd update his resume, tomorrow he'd help his mother who worked double shifts to keep their small home running. Tomorrow he'd be better. But somehow, tomorrow always slipped through his fingers. He wasn't lazy in the way people thought. He wasn't careless or selfish. Deep down, he carried a quiet guilt that weighed more than the unwashed dishes in the kitchen. He remembered who he used to be, motivated, creative, full of ideas. But that person seemed like someone else now, buried under excuses and fear of failure. Every plan felt too big, every effort too little. The comfort of doing nothing slowly became a prison. As he lay in bed once more, staring at the cracks on the ceiling, he felt a strange emptiness creeping in, the kind that doesn't yell but whispers, "Is this all you want your life to be?" Yet still, he rolled over, pulling the blanket above his head. Because doing nothing was easy. Trying was scary. And somewhere inside, he still believed he had time. What he didn't realize was that time wasn't waiting, it was moving on, one snooze at a time. It was nearly sunset when a soft knock echoed through the small house. Ryan, half asleep on the couch, groaned. Probably someone selling something. He ignored it. The knock came again, a little weaker, a little more patient. With a sigh, he dragged himself to the door and opened it, and there stood Mr. Alvarez, the elderly man from next door. His posture was bent, his clothes simple and worn. In his trembling hands, a shopping bag had torn open, oranges rolling onto the porch like tiny suns escaping. "Sorry to bother you, son," the old man said, voice raspy but kind. "Would you mind giving me a hand with the rest upstairs? My knees aren't what they used to be." Ryan hesitated. Every part of him wanted to decline, make an excuse, go back to scrolling on his phone. But then he looked at Mr. Alvarez's eyes, soft, tired, and something else, loneliness. The kind that makes you ache even in a crowded world. Without saying a word, Ryan stepped outside and began picking up the oranges. "Yeah, sure," he muttered, almost surprised by his own voice. They walked slowly together, up the narrow stairs to Mr. Alvarez's small apartment. The man thanked him with a warm smile that felt oddly comforting. The apartment smelled like old books and memories. As Ryan set the groceries down on the counter, he noticed framed photos. A young soldier, a wedding picture, a restaurant sign. "You know," Mr. Alvarez said gently, "most people don't answer the door anymore." Ryan looked at him, unsure how to reply. But something inside him shifted. He didn't know it yet, but that simple choice to help, that moment of human connection, had just cracked open the door to a path he never saw coming. Inside Mr. Alvarez's apartment, time seemed to move slower. The walls were covered in old photographs, some in black and white, others fading with age. A dusty bookshelf stood tall near the window, filled with classics, cookbooks, and handwritten journals. Ryan stood awkwardly at first, unsure why he stayed. But there was something warm and honest about the space, and the man who lived in it. Mr. Alvarez brought out 2 cups of tea, his hands slightly trembling. "Sit, son," he said with a gentle smile. Ryan sat. They talked, first about groceries, then about life. Slowly, the old man began sharing his story. He grew up in Brooklyn, in a cramped apartment with 5 siblings. He had no college degree, no money, barely spoke English when he arrived in the U.S. His first job was mopping floors in a diner. Then nights at a warehouse. Weekends in construction. But I never waited for life to hand me anything, Mr. Alvarez said, his voice steady despite the years it carried. Every job, every late night, I gave my all. Not because I was the smartest, but because I refused to be lazy. He pointed to a photograph of a small restaurant with a neon sign, El Corazon. That was mine. Took me 15 years to build it. Not perfect, but it fed people. It made a difference. Ryan sat quietly, gripped by every word. The old man wasn't bitter. He wasn't proud in the boastful sense. He was peaceful, like someone who had lived life fully, no matter how hard it was. I never waited for the right time, Mr. Alvarez said, looking straight at Ryan. I made the time right. And in that moment, something inside Ryan shifted, a stirring he hadn't felt in years. Maybe, just maybe, his life wasn't over yet. That night, Ryan lay in his dimly lit room, staring at the ceiling. The familiar hum of silence filled the space, but his mind wouldn't settle. He couldn't stop thinking about Mr. Alvarez, the quiet strength in his voice, the dignity in his struggle, the pride in his past. Ryan thought about the way the old man smiled despite the hardships, the way he spoke of work not as a burden, but as a blessing. Then, Ryan thought of his own mother. Her weary eyes. Her cracked hands. The way her shoulders slumped just a little more each evening when she came home. Her shoes, worn thin from years of walking too far, working too long. All while he stayed in bed, promising to do better tomorrow. But tomorrow never came. For the first time in years, Ryan felt something deeper than guilt. It was a quiet shame, yes, but also a spark of realization. A question began to echo inside him, what am I waiting for? He sat up. Looked around at the clutter, the stale air, the life he had let rot in pause. And slowly, with shaking fingers, he picked up his phone. He opened the alarm app. His thumb hovered over the usual 10 a.m. setting, and then he deleted it. He set a new alarm, 6 a.m. This time, he didn't make a promise to try. He didn't wait for motivation. He simply decided. When the alarm rang the next morning, it was still dark outside. But Ryan got up. He showered. He dressed. He even made his bed. Small things, but for him, they felt like climbing a mountain. Because change doesn't always begin with fireworks. Sometimes, it begins with waking up, and finally showing up for your own life. The sun was bright that morning, painting the streets in golden light. Ryan stood outside in freshly ironed clothes, his hair neatly combed, and a simple resume folded in his hand. His heart pounded, but not from fear, from purpose. For the first time in years, he felt like he was moving forward, even if he didn't know exactly where the road would lead. He walked block after block, asking for work. Most places shook their heads. Some didn't even look up. But Ryan didn't stop. He remembered Mr. Alvarez's words, don't wait for the right time. Make it right. By noon, his feet ached, and sweat dotted his brow. Then he saw a small cafe tucked between two shops, modest, but clean, with a handwritten help wanted sign in the window. He stepped inside, greeted by the smell of coffee and the soft hum of a radio. The owner, a woman in her 50s, looked him up and down. Got experience? No, Ryan admitted, but I'll work harder than anyone else. She gave him a chance. Ryan started by wiping tables, washing dishes, and running errands. He stayed late to help clean, came early to prep. When others took breaks, he kept moving. Customers noticed his smile. The team noticed his drive. Within a few weeks, the owner pulled him aside. I've never seen someone turn around like you, she said. You're getting a raise. Ryan smiled, but his mind drifted to the old man next door. Every Sunday, he still visited Mr. Alvarez. They sat by the window, sipping tea, trading stories. They laughed. They lived. One afternoon, Ryan looked at him and said softly, "Thank you for knocking on my door." Mr. Alvarez smiled, eyes glistening. "You opened it, son. That was all you." In the quiet corners of everyday life, change often begins not with grand gestures, but with simple choices: a knock on a door, a helping hand, a decision to wake up early. Ryan's journey wasn't about sudden success or dramatic transformation. It was about rediscovering purpose through connection, humility, and the courage to try again. What started as a reluctant favor to an old man became the spark that reignited Ryan's will to live with intention. Through Mr. Alvarez's quiet wisdom and his own small acts of persistence, Ryan began to shape a new future, one built not on waiting, but on doing. He learned that it's not talent or timing that defines your destiny, but effort, kindness, and the refusal to stay still. His story reminds us all, no matter how far you've fallen, it's never too late to rise. Don't wait for life to change, be the change. Don't be lazy with your dreams, your time, or your heart. Because your actions, however small, shape your destiny.